The man by the roadside's sun was just beginning to rise over the quiet hills of Palo Alto, casting soft golden hues across the sleepy streets. Morning dew clung to the grass like tiny crystals, and the hum of a distant highway was the only sound breaking the silence. Sundar Pichai sat in the back of a modest electric car, not a Tesla, but a prototype being tested by one of Google's green projects. His driver, Manuel, was a kind man who rarely spoke unless spoken to, but this morning he seemed tense. Sundar noticed the white knuckles gripping the steering wheel and the way Manuel kept glancing in the rearview mirror, as if searching for something beyond the road. Sundar, dressed in a simple gray hoodie and jeans, sipped quietly on his coffee. He was on his way to a private meeting across town, something about funding a youth robotics program, but his mind wasn't entirely there. He'd had a strange dream the night before, a dream about someone crying in the dark, someone holding onto hope by a thread. The face wasn't clear, but the voice kept repeating, "I just need someone to listen." As the car slowed down at a red light on a less traveled stretch of road, Sundar noticed a man standing by the curb. He wasn't panhandling, not exactly. He wasn't even holding a sign, but there was something deeply unsettling in the way he stood, shoulders slumped, eyes darting toward every passing car like he was begging for help without saying a word. Beside him was a shiny Tesla, its driver's door open, the keys in his hand. On the hood sat a worn, makeshift cardboard sign that simply read, "Selling car, urgent, need money for son's surgery." Manuel shifted in his seat uncomfortably. "That's been there for 2 days," he said softly. "I heard someone say the guy sleeps in the car now. Hospital bills. His son's in critical condition." Sundar leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. The man wasn't yelling or approaching anyone. He just stood there, tired and alone, hoping someone would stop. Sundar felt a strange pull in his chest, like something invisible was tethering him to that stranger. He knew the kind of desperation it took for a father to stand by the roadside and beg without begging. It wasn't pride, it was love. A fierce, all-consuming kind of love. "Pull over," Sundar said quietly. Manuel hesitated. "Sir, we're going to be late for the meeting." "I said pull over." The car eased to the curb. Sundar stepped out slowly, brushing invisible dust from his sleeves. The man by the Tesla noticed him, but didn't move. He looked tired, older than he probably was, and his eyes were bloodshot. Sundar walked over gently, hands in his pockets, offering a soft smile. "Hi," Sundar said. "Is everything okay?" The man's voice cracked. "No, not really." There was a heavy pause, like the silence between thunder and lightning. "My name is Sundar," he continued. "What's your name?" "Adrian," the man replied. "My son's name is Theo. He's 5. He needs surgery. They said, it's urgent. I don't have insurance. I've tried everything. I'm selling the only thing I have left." Sundar glanced at the car. It was in pristine condition, probably worth over $70,000, but that wasn't the point. The real story was written across Adrian's face. A story of sleepless nights, hospital waiting rooms, and unanswered prayers. "How much do you need?" Sundar asked. $78,610, Adrian said instantly. "I already sold everything else. I just need this one thing to work." "And what's wrong with Theo?" "Congenital heart defect," Adrian replied, his voice shaking. "They have to do a specialized procedure." One hospital agreed, but they want the payment up front. I begged them to wait, but they can't hold the spot. Sundar looked down, his thoughts racing. This wasn't the first time he'd seen someone struggling in silence, but something about this moment felt different. Like it wasn't chance that brought him here, it was something more. Destiny, maybe. Or a second chance for someone who had none left. "May I see a picture of Theo?" Sundar asked. Adrian nodded, pulling out a cracked phone from his pocket. He showed Sundar a photo of a small boy in a hospital gown, his smile wide but his eyes filled with exhaustion. Tubes ran from his arms, and a small teddy bear lay next to him. Sundar felt his heart twist. "He looks strong," Sundar said. "He is Adrian replied. Stronger than I ever was. A long silence followed. Cars passed. No one else stopped. The world kept spinning like it always did. Blind to one man's silent cry for help. Adrian, Sundar said carefully, I want to help. But I don't want your car. Adrian blinked. What? I don't want your car. I want your story. And I want to make sure Theo gets that surgery. But only if you let me help, not as a transaction, but as a human being. Adrian looked stunned. Who are you? Just someone who got lucky, Sundar said quietly. And someone who believes in doing the right thing when it matters most. Before Adrian could respond, Sundar gestured to Manuel, who quickly brought over his phone. Sundar made a few quick calls, one to a medical liaison, another to a hospital director. Names, addresses, and funds began moving faster than Adrian could process. Sundar turned back to him. I need you to take Theo to Stanford Medical right now. I've arranged for a specialist to look at him within the hour. But how? Don't worry about how, Sundar said. Worry about your son. Adrian's legs almost gave out. He leaned against the hood of his Tesla, tears rolling down his cheeks. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just wept. Quietly, gratefully, like a man who'd been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. Thank you. He whispered. Sundar put a hand on his shoulder. No need to thank me yet. This is only the beginning. As Adrian gathered himself and made arrangements to leave, Sundar stood back and watched him. Something about the moment lingered in the air, something more than charity. It was as if fate had drawn a line between two lives that morning, binding them together with invisible threads of purpose. Manuel, watching the whole thing from a distance, finally said, You always know who needs help, don't you? Sundar smiled faintly. No, he replied. But sometimes help finds us before we know we need to give it. But as they turned to leave, Sundar's phone buzzed again. A text from the hospital. Something about Theo's records not matching with what they'd expected. His expression darkened slightly, concern flickering in his eyes. He turned back toward the direction Adrian had driven off in, the Tesla disappearing in the distance. Something didn't sit right. Not yet. Not fully. And in that moment, he had no idea that this act of kindness would soon unravel a secret that went far deeper than anyone could have imagined. Asterisk. The file that didn't match. Morning air had grown colder despite the rising sun. Inside the electric car, Sundar sat silently, his coffee now untouched. The warmth of doing a good deed hadn't lasted long. His fingers hovered over the phone, rereading the message from Stanford Medical again and again. Patient ID and medical. Records provided for Theo Anderson do not match any existing diagnosis or schedule. Manuel, now cautiously glancing at him through the mirror, didn't dare ask. Sundar's face wasn't angry, it was focused. Not the kind of focus that comes with numbers and business charts, but the kind of quiet concentration that arrives when something doesn't add up. The kind that makes your instincts whisper, look again. Manuel, Sundar finally said, his voice low but calm. Can you drive us to Stanford Medical? I want to be there when Theo arrives. Of course, sir. The car turned smoothly onto the freeway, but Sundar's mind wasn't moving with traffic. It was trapped in a memory of Adrian shaking hands, the boy's photograph on the cracked phone, the urgency in every word he spoke. No part of it had felt staged or false. Yet the message from the hospital was clear. No child named Theo Anderson was scheduled for any heart surgery. Not today. Not ever. When they arrived at Stanford, the lobby buzzed with its usual quiet chaos, nurses walking briskly. The faint hum of intercom announcements, families huddled in corners with tired hope clinging to them. Sundar walked to the reception desk, introduced himself, and asked for Dr. Greta Nguyen, the pediatric heart surgeon he had personally called. Within minutes, a slim woman in a white coat approached, her expression respectful but puzzled. Mr. Pichai, she said, shaking his hand gently. I reviewed the information you sent regarding Theo Anderson. I'm afraid we have no record of such a patient. Not under that name, not under that diagnosis, and certainly not on our surgery schedule. Could the information have been misentered? Sundar asked, trying to stay grounded in logic. Possible, she replied, but highly unlikely. Our systems are synced in real time. I also ran a manual search using the father's name, Adrian Anderson. Still nothing. If this boy really is in critical condition, he's not here. And he never was. Sundar stood still, absorbing her words like rain soaking into dry earth. It didn't make sense. Not the way Adrian had spoken. Not the way he had cried. Desperation like that couldn't be faked. Could it? Thank you, doctor, Sundar said. Finally, may I ask for one more favor? If someone shows up today, a man named Adrian with a young boy named Theo, please let me know immediately. Of course. She nodded outside the hospital. The air felt heavier than before. Sundar leaned against the low concrete wall near the parking area and pulled out his phone. He scrolled back to the text Adrian had sent him. There weren't many, just a thank you and the hospital information he had used to forward funds. But when Sundar clicked the bank transfer receipt, his eyes narrowed. The account name didn't say Adrian Anderson. It said Michael Avery. He quickly opened the digital trail. Within a few taps, he confirmed it wasn't just a small mistake. The routing number and bank were out of state. A private bank. The money had already been withdrawn. No delays. No holds. Manuel walked up, sensing the storm building inside his usually calm passenger. Everything all right, sir? No, Sundar said quietly. I think we've been lied to. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. And yet, there was something deeper nagging at him, something he couldn't shake. He remembered the photograph of Theo. No matter what else was false, that photo had felt real. The emotion behind it had been too raw to be faked by someone without a deep connection. Either Adrian was hiding more than he had revealed, or someone else was pulling the strings. Manuel, Sundar said, now moving with purpose. Take me back to where we met Adrian. They retraced the route quickly. The spot where Adrian had stood was now empty. The cardboard sign was gone, and so was the lingering sense of hope that had once filled that space. Sundar got out of the car, walked up to the pavement, and stood there in silence for a moment. He looked at the road, the sidewalks, the nearby convenience store. He walked over to the store and asked the cashier, a young woman with tired eyes and an eyebrow piercing. Hi, did you see a man here the past few days? He was selling a Tesla, said his son needed surgery. She nodded slowly. Yeah, he was here yesterday. Came in twice. Bought water and baby wipes. Left in a hurry later. Someone picked him up in a black SUV. Not the Tesla. Was the kid with him? Nope. Just the guy. Looked stressed out, though. Real stressed. Did he say anything else? Just that he was almost done, and this time would work. Weird choice of words. Sundar thanked her, left his number, and stepped outside, his thoughts spinning. Black SUV. Not the Tesla. This time would work. It didn't sound like a scammer with a plan. It sounded like a man on the run, or a man trying to cover up something. Deeper back in the car, Sundar opened his laptop and connected to a private Google network. In moments, he pulled up city traffic cams. He keyed in the intersection near the convenience store and scanned through the past 24 hours. There Adrian, getting into a black SUV. The license plate wasn't fully visible, but part of it was. Enough to start a trace. He copied the clip and sent it to a friend at a data analytics firm that assisted with nonprofit rescue missions. It wasn't exactly part of his job, but Sundar had quietly helped in finding missing people before. This felt similar. Only this time the person wasn't missing yet, but maybe, just maybe, they were in trouble. As the day dragged on. Sundar received no updates from the hospital. No one matching Adrian's description had arrived. No child named Theo. And no further word from Adrian himself. By late afternoon, Sundar's phone finally buzzed. Unknown number. No caller. He picked up immediately. Hello. A voice shaky, breathless, trembling came through. Please, you have to stop looking. You don't understand what's going on, Adrian? Sundar asked, heart pounding. My name's not Adrian, the voice whispered. I lied. I had to. But my son, he is real. And he's in more danger now because you got involved. Tell me where you are, Sundar said calmly. We can fix this. You can't. You don't know who they are. They'll hurt him. They'll hurt me. They're already watching me. You gave me hope, but now they think I've talked. Please don't call back. And the line went dead. Sundar sat frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. The weight of those words sank deep. This wasn't about a scam anymore. It was bigger. Messier. Someone had forced this man to lie. Someone dangerous. And now, Theo, whoever he really was, might be at the center of something dark. Manuel broke the silence gently. Sir, what now? Sundar stood slowly, his voice low but firm. Now we find out who they are. And we find Theo, whatever it takes. But as they drove off into the falling dusk, neither of them noticed the black SUV parked 2 blocks away. Its tinted windows reflected the street lamps. And behind the glass, someone was watching. Someone who already knew Sundar's name. Someone who had just whispered into a phone, "We have a problem." Asterisk into the shadows following. Morning arrived not with sunshine, but with a fog that blanketed the streets of Silicon Valley, like a shroud, heavy and cold. It was the kind of morning that made everything seem distant, even time. Inside his quiet home, Sundar Pichai sat at the kitchen table, staring at a blank notepad. The steam from his untouched tea spiraled upward, lost in the air. Sleep had not come easy the night before, not after that call. The voice still echoed in his ears, terrified, desperate, and filled with something worse than fear, resignation. He replayed every detail over and over. The fake name, the truth behind the eyes, the black SUV, the mysterious they, and Theo real, innocent, and in danger. Sundar wasn't sure what he'd stepped into, but now that he had, there was no turning away. It wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about something deeper, responsibility, maybe even redemption. He reached for his laptop and logged into a private, encrypted channel, something used only in rare cases when high-level searches required total confidentiality. A few keystrokes later, he accessed the partial plate from the black SUV caught on the traffic cam. Using pattern recognition, he ran it against a custom database pulled from public and private surveillance networks. The system spat out 3 possible matches. One stood out. A vehicle registered under a shell company called Helium Logistics. Based out of Nevada with no online presence, no phone number, no web address. But there was a location. A rundown warehouse at the edge of town. Before making a move. Sundar placed a secure call to a man he hadn't spoken to in months. Rayan. Malik, a former cybersecurity specialist turned freelance investigator who now worked with global humanitarian groups. Sundar had funded one of his rescue missions a year ago, helping extract trafficked engineers from Eastern Europe. He didn't trust many people in situations like this, but Rayan was one of them. Rayan, Sundar said as the call connected. I need your help. It's urgent. There's a child in danger. Send me everything you have, Rayan replied without hesitation. I'll dig in immediately. While the file transferred, Sundar couldn't sit still. The fog outside felt like a warning. His mind flicked back to that one line the man had whispered. They'll hurt him. Not they might, but they will. This wasn't just a parent fearing debt collectors or hospital bills. This was a father who knew what violence looked like. An hour later, Rayan called back. You were right to be concerned, he said grimly. Helium Logistics isn't real. It's a front used in 3 different missing persons cases from the last 2 years. All unresolved. Different cities. Same pattern. A desperate parent. A sick child. A story too tragic to ignore. They get donations. Disappear, and the trail goes cold. So this is bigger than just one father? Sundar asked. Yes. But here's the thing, they're not scammers. They're not after the money. The withdrawals made on those accounts, they weren't even used. They were rerouted. In every case, the parents had one thing in common. They once worked in sensitive industries, biomedical labs, quantum research, military contracts. Sundar's heart stopped for a second. And Adrian Michael Avery, Whatever his name is, what was his background? Sundar asked Raya and paused. That's the part that took me a while. The man you met used to work for a government-backed project in Seattle classified systems integration. He vanished from public records 6 years ago, no trace since. Until now. A heavy silence fell between them, so he didn't lie about his son being sick, Sundar said quietly. He just didn't tell the whole story. No, Rayan. Agreed. He lied to survive. Sundar closed his eyes and took a slow breath. The story was no longer about a man selling his car for surgery. It was about someone who had once been buried by a system so deep and dark, he'd had to erase his identity to escape it. And now, someone had found him again. I'm going to that warehouse, Sundar said, his voice low and determined. Wait, Rayan Karshand? They're watching you. If you go in alone, I'm not going to wait for them to make the next move, Sundar interrupted. They already took everything from that man. I won't let them take his child too. A few hours later, dressed in plain clothes and wearing a baseball cap pulled low, Sundar stood across the street from the warehouse. It looked abandoned. Corrugated steel walls covered in graffiti. Broken windows patched with plywood. A heavy silence surrounded the building like a moat. But there were signs of life, fresh tire tracks, a security camera perched at an odd angle, and a single light on in the far corner. He didn't walk straight in. Instead, he waited, watched. Photos. Sent them to Rayan, who quickly mapped out potential entry points and confirmed that the power lines connected to an active substation. This wasn't a forgotten relic. It was functioning under the radar dot then, without a sound. Sundar circled. Behind the building. He found a loose panel near the back, just as Rayan predicted, and squeezed through the gap. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. Crates were stacked along the walls, most unlabeled. A faint humming came from the far end, like the soft thrum of machines working in secret dot as he moved deeper into the warehouse. His eyes caught movement. 2 men, dressed in dark clothes, speaking in hushed tones near a door with a biometric lock. Sundar couldn't hear everything, but one phrase chilled him to the core. We moved the kid tonight. He didn't wait. He backed away silently, retraced his steps, and slipped back out the way he came as soon as he was in his car. He called Rayan again. They're moving Theo tonight, he said. We have to. Act now. Already 1 step ahead of you, Rayan replied. I have a team. Ex-military, off book. They'll be there in an hour. But we need you to confirm, was the kid inside. I didn't see him, Sundar admitted. But they, said the kid. It has to be him. All right, stay nearby. Don't engage. Just observe. But Sundar couldn't just observe. He wasn't wired that way. Every moment wasted felt like a lifetime lost. He couldn't bear the thought of this little boy he'd never even met being hurt or taken again. Something about the whole thing gnawed at his chest like a burning knot. He had promised to help. He had said the words, "This is only the beginning." And now the real beginning had arrived with danger, risk, and no guarantee of success. As he drove to a spot overlooking the warehouse from a safe distance, Sundar's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. He opened it, heart. Pounding dot on the screen was Theo, tied to a chair in what looked like a cold, empty room, his face pale, lips dry, his voice weak. Please, help my dad, he whispered. They said they'll take me away if he doesn't give them what they want. And then the screen went black. No demands. No threats. Just silence. But for Sundar, that silence was deafening. Because now it wasn't just a race against lies. It was a race against time. Asterisk, the weight of promised sky had turned an ashen gray by the time Sundar returned to the overlook, parking his car behind a cluster of tall shrubs. The fog hadn't lifted. It had thickened, like a curtain cloaking the town in quiet dread. As he sat there in the hush of the late afternoon, his fingers trembled slightly as he replayed the video of Theo once more. The boy's small voice, the dim room, the helplessness in his eyes, it cut deeper each time. Sundar had seen pain before, in spreadsheets reflecting global poverty rates, in letters from children sponsored through education programs, in protests. flashing across screens, but this was different. This was direct, personal. This had a face, a heartbeat. He remembered his own children when they were that age. The way they clinged to his leg when they were scared. The way they believed he could fix anything. He thought about Michael Avery, about what it must feel like to have run so far. Changed your name, erased your history, and still find yourself powerless to protect the one person who means everything. Sundar hadn't made a promise to just help that morning by the roadside. He had made a silent vow to be the person someone like Michael had never found before. A stranger who stayed. His phone buzzed. Rand's voice came through the secure line, low and serious. My team's in position. We've got eyes on the entrance and perimeter. No movement yet. We'll breach at sundown. That gives us 45 minutes. They said they're moving him tonight, Sundar replied. You think they'll stick to it? People like this run on patterns. They operate in shadows, yes, but they rely on precise timing. When the city sleeps, they move. Most likely, they'll make the transfer between 10 and midnight. We'll have one shot. Sundar hesitated before responding. I want to be there. We discussed this, Rayan said. You've done your part. Let the team handle the rest. No, Sundar said quietly. I gave my word. And I need to see this through. Rayan didn't argue. Not because he agreed, but because he knew Sundar Pichai wasn't the kind of man to change course once conviction rooted itself inside him as the sun dipped below the horizon. The warehouse transformed. Shadows grew longer. A single light turned on above the side door. Two figures emerged briefly to smoke, talking in low voices before heading back inside. At exactly 9:12 p.m., a nondescript black van pulled up, its engine idling without headlights. It didn't leave. It simply waited in a makeshift command van across the street. Rayon's team watched through surveillance feeds. 4 operatives, all trained in extraction and non-lethal intervention, prepared for breach. Their goal: get Theo out safely. Nothing more. Nothing less. Confirmation, one operative said into the mic. The boy is inside. Room 6, back hallway, guarded. Sundar sat tensely nearby, watching every frame of video on the monitor in front of him. Theo looked pale. Shivering slightly, seated in a metal chair. No restraints, but clearly under surveillance. His hands were folded in his lap, and his eyes darted toward the door every few seconds, expecting someone. Maybe his father. Maybe help the timer started. 10 minutes until breach, but then something happened. The screen flickered. The room emptied. Theo was gone. Wait, Sundar shouted. What happened? Where did he go? Switching cameras now, said the tech beside him. Fingers flying across the keyboard. The feed jumped. They saw a man hood up, face hidden, carrying Theo through the hallway. Not a guard. Not one of Rayan's men. Someone else. And then Sundar's phone rang. He answered instantly. The voice was familiar, shaky, urgent, terrified. It's Michael. They figured out I called you. They're moving him now earlier than planned. I got inside. I'm trying to get him out the back. But I need help. Sundar's heart raced. Which exit? North end. Through the drainage corridor? But they're coming. Before Sundar could respond, gunshots echoed faintly through the surveillance feed. Go, Rayan barked to his team. Move now. The operatives sprang into action. Sundar followed without hesitation, grabbing a vest and slipping out the side of the command van. Everything inside him told him to stay back, to let the professionals handle it, but something stronger pushed him forward. This wasn't a calculated decision. It was instinct. It was the part of him that believed leaders shouldn't sit safely. While others ran into danger. As they circled the warehouse, the north corridor came into view. Sure enough, a small door near the drainage canal was swinging open. A man, Michael, emerged, carrying Theo in his arms. Behind them, 2 masked figures gave chase. Rayan's team moved in, silently and fast. One operative disarmed the first attacker with a swift motion. The second took down the other with a taser. Michael stumbled forward, nearly dropping Theo. Sundar caught them just in time. I didn't think you'd come. Michael gasped, breathless. I said I would, Sundar replied. You're not alone anymore. Theo stirred slightly in his father's arms, his eyes fluttering open. Papa? He whispered. I'm here, Michael said, tears slipping down his face. You're safe now. They moved quickly, shielding them as they rushed toward the van. Inside, medics checked Theo's vitals. He was malnourished but stable, conscious, scared, but alive. Sundar sat beside him, gently holding the boy's tiny hand. Hi, Theo, he said softly. You don't know me, but you're very brave. Theo blinked slowly, eyes meeting his. Are you the man from the car? Yes, Sundar replied. I told your papa I'd help you, and I meant it. A faint smile touched Theo's lips. Before he drifted back into sleep, back at a secure location, Michael finally told the full story. 6 years ago, he had discovered an illegal project buried deep inside a defense contractor system. Something unethical. Something targeting children for neurological testing masked as medical research. When he blew the whistle, everything fell apart. He was discredited, threatened, erased. The only reason he'd survived was by disappearing, changing his identity, and keeping Theo off every digital grid. But someone had found them again. And this time, they didn't want silence. They wanted his compliance. They threatened to take him, Michael said, voice shaking. So I made up the story about selling the Tesla. I knew someone would stop. I just prayed it would be someone good. Why me? Sundar asked quietly. I recognized you, Michael said. And I knew if you stopped, you wouldn't just walk away. Sundar looked down, the weight of that trust heavy on his shoulders. You were right. I couldn't. But even as they spoke, Rayan returned with new intel. We traced the van. There's more to this. More kids. More families. We just opened a door to something much bigger. Sundar stood, the fatigue in his bones deep, but so was the resolve. Then we're not finished, he said. This doesn't end with Theo. Asterisk behind the curtained sun hadn't yet risen, but the world was already wide awake in Sundar's mind. He stood alone on the rooftop of the safe house, watching the stars fade as faint lines of light began to break across the horizon. Silence wrapped around him like a thick blanket, but his thoughts refused to rest. Everything that had happened in the past 48 hours kept replaying in his mind like a storm on a loop. The desperate man by the road, the warehouse, the chase, the boy's fragile voice, the secret whispered too late, thought Michael and Theo. We're finally safe, sleeping inside, under the care of a private medical team Sundar had flown in overnight. And yet, Sundar felt anything but relief. Safety was temporary. Healing was a long road. And the truth they had uncovered wasn't just unsettling, it was enormous. Beneath the surface of one family's nightmare was a web tangled with names, networks, and motives that reached far beyond their small corner of the world. When Rayan joined him on the rooftop, he looked as tired as Sundar felt. His eyes were bloodshot from hours of nonstop tracing and digital forensics. He handed Sundar a tablet with the latest findings. Asterisk. It's worse than we thought, he said quietly. I ran the internal logs we extracted from that warehouse server. There are 3 other facilities just like it. Different states. Same cover companies. Different families. They're running a coordinated operation. Sundar scrolled through the tablet, the files blinking back at him, names, photos. Profiles of children marked by unknown tags like subject. 4B7 or phase 2B. It was cold, mechanical. Each line was a child reduced to. Data. What exactly are they doing? Sundar asked. They're testing neurological software, Rayan explained, voice low. Brain signal interception. Behavior prediction. Some of the code is military grade. But here's the real twist. One of the systems uses a machine learning model derived from early AI prototypes Google helped build years ago. Sundar looked up sharply. What? It's been modified beyond recognition, but the core design, it was part of an old open source initiative. Someone took it, retooled it. Now they're using it on children. especially children with certain rare conditions that make their neural responses easier to train. Theo has one of those conditions. A cold wave settled in Sundar's chest. They weren't just harming kids, they were using them, training. Algorithms with living minds stopped turning childhoods into test environments. We need to go public, Sundar said. Raya and hesitated. Not yet. If we spook them, they'll disappear overnight. These kinds of people survive in the dark. They thrive when they're cornered. We need to hit all locations at once. Extract every child. Then expose everything. How long? Sundar asked. 72. Hours, Rayan replied. I've already contacted 2 other teams. We're syncing intel. We move together. Sundar nodded slowly. And what about Michael? Rayan sighed. He's part of this whether he wants to be or not. They'll come after him again. BO2. Unless we erase their footprints for? Good. Below them, the quiet night was beginning to shift into a gray, uncertain dawn. The sky no longer looked peaceful, it looked like a prelude. Something big was coming, and they both felt it. Later that morning. Sundar sat with Michael at the breakfast table, a silent understanding between them. Theo was resting in the next room, his vitals better, his spirit slowly returning. I never wanted any of this, Michael said after a long pause. I just wanted a normal life, a small job, a place where Theo could grow up without fear. And you did everything you could to give him that, Sundar replied. But this, what? You found is bigger than just your family? And now we have the chance to stop it, Michael nodded slowly. Then let's finish what we started. Together, they joined Rayan's planning team, gathering data, connecting pieces. They learned that each facility followed a pattern, lure. In desperate parents, through false hope medical bills, experimental treatment offers, fake scholarships. Once inside, the child was monitored, data extracted, families silenced or discarded. It was systematic, efficient, terrifying. As the mission came together, Sundar couldn't help but think about the moral crossroads he now stood at. He had spent his life in tech, in innovation, believing in progress. But this was a twisted version of that dream, a mirror turned upside down. And somewhere along the way, someone had taken the tools meant to connect the world and had turned them into weapons against its most vulnerable. We'll hit all 3 sites at 2 a.m. Pacific time, Rayan explained to the group on the final day of planning. We'll operate simultaneously with separate extraction and protection teams. 0 casualties, full recovery. Sundar, watching every line on the digital map light up, felt the weight of a truth. Few people ever got close. 2. Technology was only as good as the hands that held it. And this time, it had fallen into the wrong hands. As night approached, Sundar checked on Theo one last time. The boy was awake now. Playing quietly with a small toy, Sundar had brought a wind-up robot that blinked red lights when moved. He smiled. When Sundar walked in, "Are you the robot man?" Theo asked. Sundar chuckled softly. "Maybe a little." "Thank you for helping my dad," Theo said. "He said you saved us." "You both saved each other," Sundar replied. "And now we're going to help others too." Theo tilted his head. "Like heroes?" "Exactly like heroes." Just before the teams moved out that night, Sundar stood with Michael by the back of the van, helmets and earpieces being distributed behind them. The air was thick with quiet tension. No one spoke unless necessary. They were going into places built to be invisible, and they were going in to shine light. "Are you ready?" Sundar asked. "I'm scared," Michael admitted, "but yes." "Good," Sundar said. "Fear means we're alive. But doing this anyway means we're more than that." Then came the final call, teams in motion. The vehicles rolled out in the darkness, moving like silent guardians across state lines and back roads. Every location had been planned, every path cleared. But even with every detail accounted for, no one expected what would happen next. Because just as the first team breached the warehouse in Nevada, every screen in the command van went black. And then a message appeared. "We see you." Asterisk, the miracle unfolds for a brief moment. Time froze. The screens inside the command van went dark, and everyone stood still, their breath caught mid-motion. The glowing message we see you pulsed on every monitor, each word like a heartbeat, echoing through a room full of lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. Sundar stared at the screen, his mind racing. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching, they were prepared. They had anticipated the breach, intercepted their systems, and were now signaling one clear message. We're still in control. Raya, and ever calm under pressure, was already at the keyboard, fingers flying in a blur of commands and emergency reroutes. They're jamming our feeds, but not completely. That message came through our own relay. It's psychological warfare meant to rattle us. Did it work? Sundar asked quietly, his voice steady despite the storm inside. Only if we let it. Rayan replied. Outside, the vans remained in place. The field teams now relying solely on radio comms and encrypted offline protocols, everything digital, had to be rerouted. Every move now had to be made with calculated caution. The element of surprise was gone. But the mission WS in single quotes T. Sundar turned to the rest of the team, his voice firm. We go forward, we adapt, but we do not stop. Not now. And so, with darkness threatening to engulf their plan, they lit a new fire one, not powered by technology, but by something stronger. Belief. In Nevada, Team Alpha breached the first warehouse using old-school entry tactics. No tech, no drones, just human precision. Inside, they found what could only be described as a child prison disguised as a research lab. Rows of cots, tablets wired to machines, screens displaying neurological scans, and small figures curled up in corners, too tired to cry. The children weren't chained, but they were trapped in another way, confined by fear, isolation, and the lingering echo of promises never kept. The operatives moved fast, securing the area, disabling internal power grids, and wrapping each child in thermal blankets as medics moved in behind them. At the second site, Team Bravo encountered heavier resistance. 3 armed guards tried to hold them off, but they were subdued with non-lethal force. The most shocking discovery wasn't the presence of weapons, but the wall of monitors in the main room leave feeds from homes, schools, parks. They were tracking families, watching potential subjects. It wasn't just an experiment. It was a recruitment net. At the third and final location, somewhere deep in an abandoned facility just outside of Dallas, Team Charlie arrived to find it already half emptied. Cages had been removed, paperwork shredded. But in a sealed room beneath the floor, they discovered 4 children hidden inside a soundproof vault. One of them held a piece of paper with Michael's name written in shaky pencil. He said you'd come. The little girl whispered when they opened the door. By sunrise, all teams had successfully extracted the children. 32 lives. 32. Miracles. Back at the safe house, Sundar and Michael watched the returns come in. One by one, the children arrived, some asleep, some confused, all safe. Medical teams moved swiftly, evaluating vitals, cleaning wounds, administering care. But the healing that needed to happen went far beyond the physical. Michael sat down beside Theo, who had just woken up to the sound of voices and quiet chaos around him. Papa? Theo whispered, eyes wide. Did we win? Michael smiled, his voice cracking. Yes, buddy. We won. So we're heroes now? You've always been one. Just then, a small girl, maybe 6 years old, eyes wide with wonder, approached Theo and sat beside him. They didn't say anything. They just sat there. 2 children bonded by a pain too deep for words and a freedom too fragile to fully grasp. Sundar watched them from across the room. And for the first time in days, his shoulders relaxed. Not because the fight was over, but because something had changed. The impossible had been done. And the impossible, when met with courage and kindness, always leaves a mark. 3 weeks later, Sundar stood on a quiet stage in front of a closed-door assembly at a tech summit. The room was filled with top executives, policymakers, and digital leaders from across the world. He wasn't there to talk about innovation or revenue. He was there to tell the story that wasn't supposed to be told. Without slides or fancy words. Sundar spoke of Theo, of Michael, of the warehouses, of the way greed had disguised itself as research and how algorithms had been weaponized not for progress, but for power. He ended with a single question.